All right. For our presentation, we are doing a food assessment on the Okemos region. And my name is Colin.
I'm Seth.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mira.
I'm Jaden.
And I'm Abby.
So here is a quick location and overview of the food environment in the Okemos area. A few important things that we noticed that contributed to the food environment and food accessibility were firstly an overabundance of fast food restaurants. Many of the stores we had were nearby to a Chick-fil-A, a Culver's, or a Wendy's. There was also a presence of public bus routes. Okemos is part of Ingham County, where approximately 14.9% of the population experiences food insecurity. And in Ingham County, the adult diabetes rate stands at 8.2%, which is lower than the state average of 9.7%. In an area with a median income between $41,344 to $70,263.
All right. So then transitioning into kind of our NEMS assessments and what we kind of gathered from all of our NEMS assessments. Um, I focused on Gordon Food Services. So one of the biggest issues that I noticed at GFS was that a lot of the pricing for the more nutritious options um, was priced higher or equivalent um, to those that were less nutritious. And very rarely did I see anything that was priced less than the non-nutritious options. And really only when that happened was with like the cereal that was priced a few cents less, but nothing too marginal. Um, and for the things that were a lot more expensive usually were like the milk and stuff like that, that um, were also limited in terms of the more nutritious options. So that was one of the biggest issues that I found. Um, Sometimes the less nutritious options were the only options available. This was pretty prominent with like the hot dogs that I found there. No low fat, no real low fat or no fat options. Um, some of the healthier items in the store were hidden away or in like mixed in with a bunch of other goods that made it very hard for customers to be able to distinguish what was the healthier options and what was the not so healthy options. And this was very prominent in the frozen food section. There was an abundance of frozen foods, and majority of them were non-nutritious. And the healthy options were very much just kind of scattered throughout, not even well identifiable, which posed some issues. But one thing that the store did do quite well was displaying their fresh produce at the front of the store. Majority, if not all of their fresh produce was displayed at the front of the store, and you had to walk by it in order to see everything else in the store, which I've read psychologically. Um, can encourage people to purchase these products. So it's nice that those healthier and more nutritious options are available as the first thing you see right when you walk in.
The next store was Tom's Food Store, and some of the observations that I made were that prices compared to other stores were higher for the same products. In particular, for meat, it was about 60 cents more for the same exact type of beef. And then for when you first walked into the store, the first items you saw were bakery items and candy. and that was placed right like when you walk in. There was a limited bus route to the store if you were from an area outside of campus or like right around campus, but other than that, there's not a ton of bus routes. And there were lots of variety when it came to both fresh fruits and vegetables. There were more than 10 options of each, and they all looked like good produce. And there were not a lot of obvious low fat options.
So I went to the Kroger in Okemos, and so they did have a lot of availability. They had a wide range of products, and they had a lot of options for healthier alternatives. So they had a lot of low fat, fat-free, organic, whole wheat, baked chips. However, those did cost more than their full fat or regular counterparts. And although they did have a wide range of produce and like fresh vegetables and stuff, the quality of that food was very poor. The lettuce was wilted, the grapes were wrinkly, a lot of it wasn't really edible, and I would assume that a lot of people wouldn't purchase them, and it might influence people to reach for the more shelf stable items, which are unhealthier and could lead to diet issues and overall just limits the access to healthy fresh food. And this could also indicate maybe some supply chain issues with why the produce is still sitting there if it's gone bad. So, just something interesting that I noticed.
I went to Meijer, and similar to other stores in the area, I found that the majority of the nutritious options were more expensive than the less nutritious items. And there were very few low fat and fat free products throughout the entire store. There were a few healthy alternatives present, but they were much less common than the unhealthy foods such as soda, chips, and cereal. Healthy foods were located around the edges of the store, right? But right when you walk in the store, there is a large section of produce, so that's a good thing. For example, I found that whole milk was more common than skim milk, even, and they were both priced the same. And Meijer did not have any fat-free hot dogs. In the area, there is a Chick-fil-A in the same parking lot as the Meijer, and there is a bus station at the store which allows for easy access to the store.
So I went to the Target in Okemos, and I noticed that the healthier options at the store were more expensive. Um, I did notice that Target like had a good section of fruits and vegetables, and in the food section, it was in the middle of everything, and there were like aisles on either side. There were unhealthy snacks and candy placed at the front of the store near the checkout. I also just one thing about Target, I realized that the food section was in the back, so you had to like walk through the store to get there. Um, and then Target's own brand, the Good and Gather, I noticed was like a good option for healthier food, and it offered food without artificial flavors, synthetic colors, artificial sweeteners, and high fructose corn syrup. And then I just noticed that Target, it was not really easy to get there if you didn't have a car. You couldn't really walk or bike there. So that was just one thing I noticed too.
So I went to Aldi. I also found that prices for healthier food options didn't really exist. They were either of equal price or of higher price than their less healthy counterparts. Aldi did a good job of placing their produce directly at the front of the store, though it was adjacent to their baked goods. Aldi didn't take or didn't carry some goods. They didn't have any low-fat baked goods for a healthier option, but they also didn't carry like hot dogs, for instance. Low stock tended to be an issue throughout the store for the healthier options. I could only find a couple boxes of healthier cereal, and healthier milk was not plentiful at all. There was only a couple options. The unhealthy options are a lot more plentiful, and the healthier items are often of one type when it comes to each type of food. And I also noticed that Aldi is in a pretty car-centric area. There isn't really a whole lot of access ways if you're trying to bike there or walk there. I think you would find it difficult to get there without a car.
All right, so now kind of moving to the um, some of the challenges slash kind of successes of kind of this food system that we're looking at in the environment of the Okemos area was fast food. And we felt it was important to talk about kind of the fast food and the effects that it is having on the environment. Um, so we all noticed that a lot of these fast food restaurants like Chick-fil-A, Culver's, KFC, Wendy's, Jimmy John's, Chipotle, among many other stores or many other fast food restaurants, including some sit-down restaurants, were all located relatively close, if not out in front of all the stores that we looked at. Um, in my case, KFC and Wendy's were both located directly in front of my store, GFS, that I looked at. And this poses a pretty significant issue because of a quote from a study that I found that said, not surprisingly, as household incomes rise, households shift from ready-to-eat food from grocery stores to fast food and full-service restaurants, um, indicating that kind of because Okemos is a relatively affluent area, as these incomes rise, um, that doesn't necessarily mean people are looking to pay more money for these more nutritious options in grocery stores. And it appears that this can influence a likelihood that they will take that money and spend it on the cheaper fast food options or full service restaurant meals that are available in front of these stores that we looked at, which poses quite a significant issue to the food environment and food system.
Another observation we had was about urban and public transportation. And from some of the data that we looked at was on average, Okemos residents own 2 cars, according to Data USA in 2024. And all of these stores provide public transportation to stops that are located near the stores in which we performed our NEBS assessments. And those bus routes are Route 1, Route 22, Route 23, and Route 48. And there are certain issues that do arise without a car or access to public transportation when faced with long walks along a road with high speed limits and limited walking infrastructure. And a lot in a lot of these areas it's very car centric, and this infrastructure limits the ability to have equitable food access to those without access to a vehicle or the monetary ability to ride on public transportation. And also another observation we made was when people are using this urban and public transportation, it helps limit the food miles and carbon emissions that are produced when it comes to consuming the food that we eat.
So we identified 4 different solutions and the trade-offs associated that we think could help these issues. Our first solution was subsidization for stores carrying healthier options at lower prices or that are grown locally via legislation. Some trade-offs from that solution is there would be higher taxes to support the subsidization. And there may be potential conflicts associated with lowering costs for specific goods. But as a result, there would be better prices for these healthier options for customers. So we think that's a viable solution. Another solution is legislation restricting harmful and unhealthy ingredients in food carried by the stores to minimize negative health effects. Some trade-offs for that is we think that there would be a reduction in consumption of unhealthy, cheap options at the grocery stores, but there may be potential opposition from large food providers in consolidated systems that produce cheap options due to fear of loss of profit at grocers. Another solution is public transportation routes running frequently to and from major grocery stores to allow easier access. Potentially with reduced rates advertised for these routes, maybe advertising them as grocery routes. Some trade-offs from that, we think there may be higher taxes associated with a larger public program that would benefit more people. There may be potential cuts to wages for CATA drivers to hire more drivers. Though, as a result, we think there would be a reduction in CO2 emissions for a healthier local environment, since there would be less internal combustion engines used. Another solution is expansion of double up food bucks programs for healthier options associated with higher prices. And trade-off for that is increased costs for the program, which is already an expensive program. But we think there would be a reduction in fast food contribution to the local economy.
All right. So, kind of adding a little bit more context to some of these solutions and trade-offs. Uh, it costs more money to produce healthy food and pay workers fairly, but high prices hinder marginalized customers from being able to afford the food. Um, and then another point we wanted to make was having more options of healthier, low-price food um, could lead to an initial uh, profit drop for the stores due to having the income of the more non-nutritious foods that make up majority of their inventory um, dropping. However, research shows that 95% of the customers are looking for healthier options. Thus, it's implied that limiting the amount of like non-nutritious options and increasing the amount of healthier options is what customers want, which can likely increase customer satisfaction with these stores. Um, Also increasing the amount of customers consuming healthier foods. And then in the long run, even though there might be that initial profit drop, uh, there would likely the profits would likely get back to a state where they'd be equal to what they were with those abundance of non-nutritious options, and maybe even get higher considering the large amount of people that are looking for those healthier options when they're shopping. In addition to what we've talked about with the urban transportation section and everything like that, um, a lot of people in these marginal and or a lot of marginalized people in these areas um, can sometimes have limited amounts, or not sometimes, but majority of the times have limited amounts of expendable income to spend on things like bus routes when they have to focus on getting food at a lot of these grocery stores that they're using these bus routes to commute to. Um, so having accessible and low rates of transportation on public transportation um, can help allow for people taking these bus routes who might not be able to afford even their relatively cheap prices um, to afford them. And this could cause a slight dip in initial transportation earnings. Um, but as per our report on public transportation, lowering prices and or as per a report on public transportation, lowering prices implies that uh, it could increase public transportation use by about 10%, which is quite a drastic amount. Um, this increase in public transportation use could likely benefit the environment due to less people using cars and stuff like that to transport themselves to these stores and instead choosing a form of public transportation. And then this could also benefit the local economy by increasing the amount of people taking these, in our case, cattle buses to these grocery stores in order to buy more food from these grocery stores, thus again benefiting the local economy.
So, throughout our research, our team concluded that many price and access barriers with vehicle centricity existed in our region, and this resulted in difficulty for people to get to the grocery stores or to purchase the more nutritious options. And we believe that proper legislation that supports public transit, food programs, and subsidizing healthy foods will help relieve these issues and increase food sovereignty in Okemos. And we hope that our approach will be considered in the future as we feel it will improve the overall nutritional health and wellness of the residents in Okemos. Thank you.
And then here are our sources. If I can move this out of the way. There we go. All right, thank you.